All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the January 2018 meeting of the Southern Fried DNN user group. We are thrilled tonight to talk all things DNN. We are going to talk about community activities, exciting things that are coming up. We're going to talk a little bit about the conference, DNN Summit, that is next month. Still a chance to do several things, including signing up for training and signing up for the slopes, and we'll talk about that a little bit. We've got some other interesting activity in the community that we'll run through. But for tonight, our primary session, our primary conversation is going to be an open roundtable format. We did one of these last year on, a couple of these actually. One of them on differences between DNN and WordPress, for example, and a few things. I had some very active and lively conversations, and we wanted to bring that type of approach to this topic, something that I have heard anytime I'm at a DNN conference, anytime I'm at a location where there are 4 or 5 people all talking about things they need, and it is about the differences and things they love, things they don't love, about module licensing and the different methods and ways that are available to us today for licensing modules and coming up with what we'd like to see in the future. So our primary session is going to be an open roundtable discussion about that, and we're looking forward to that this evening. So thank you to everybody who's joining us in person, online tonight for this active conversation, and afterwards, if you've missed this and you're watching it on the stream afterwards, thank you for joining us as well. We'd love to continue that conversation in not only conversation on the website, but bring that to the convention and let's have a good, hearty conversation. But kicking it off, bringing it back around to what we are going through today, let's begin by talking a little bit about our sponsor recognition. Let me back out first. I should have checked with you before we started. Do we have anyone special on for today?
A lovely meeting place.
Well, then we have all of our normal DNN Southern Fried sponsors. Of course, we have everyone who's supported us in the past.
Manage.com with the
but
website.
We have Manage.com. We have Mandy with the theme of our website. We have Envisionative for our wonderful space that we're meeting in tonight.
How all the people that showed up.
A lot of us are involved, and we may think of all our sponsors. Okay. Community buzz and announcements. In no particular order, I'm going to go through a few things, and as we do on meetings, I'll pass it around to you, Clint and David, for some miscellaneous items and buzz. We're going to move to Summit in a minute, so let's hold off on doing that next. One thing I did run across here just a few days ago is that Christalk has released a new skin version, and I did notice that. Has anyone picked that up or taken a look at it yet?
Christalk till you don't stop.
All right. All right. Clint, community buzz, any other announcements that you're aware of? We have any webinars coming up soon that we need to pay attention to?
Yeah, sorry, I'm like raising my desk up here as you were doing that. But yeah, so as far as community stuff, you definitely got Chris Hammond releasing I think he calls it Hammerhead.
Yeah.
And so Mandy dropped Porto 4 today.
I should have started with that. I was reading through that email as I was packing on my computer to come in here today. We are running proudly Porto 2 on the Southern Fried website, and my own company, More Creative, we use Porto in a couple of different places, and we love it. So the first thing I was doing was jumping through the details to find out what's new and different in Porto 4. So that's an exciting new release too.
Awesome. Yeah. So I haven't had time to look into it. I just saw the email that it came out. Mike Smeltzer, welcome. He's new. Thanks for joining.
Hi there, Mike.
Yeah. So other buzz and stuff. I'm just kind of glancing at some of the blogs. So I posted a blog about IIS gotchas, which is just things that you can get tripped up on when installing DNN.
Mm-hmm.
DNN Digest came out, January edition. We had an MVP meeting, which we're posting the videos now, so you can now go watch those. Mm-hmm. We have been actively updating the community showcase page. So we've got a lot of people that are submitting, their sites in the showcase. And so if you go there, we've got over 100 new sites there, and I'm working on updating the page even further. So that is constantly going, and
you know, Clint, I wasn't aware that there was some new, I don't know, renewed activity there. If we can, let's put a bookmark in there to come back to that in March for our March session, and maybe we'll have a session piece where we look through that together.
So what that tells me is that you may not be reading your.
No, I didn't see the January one. Absolutely not.
Right there, that's where it hits, right here. Oh, yeah. But anyway, yeah. So in other news in the community that I'm aware of, the ecosystem advisory groups. Okay, we've had a lot of good meetings. I've got 4 Slack channels open, and it's hard to keep up with them all day. There are a lot of good and very rich conversations, is how I would describe it at this point. But yeah, the page you're on, Ryan, is Andy's blog, where he's,
right. He first introduced it.
The 4 areas: technology led by Sean, developers led by Peter Donker, partners led by Mr. David Poindexter, and awareness by Will Stroll. So all of the groups are meeting. The rubber's kind of hitting the road, so to speak, as far as getting traction with stuff. So it's really good to see. So those are actively going, and if anybody's watching this and they're not a member or a part of a group, feel free to email me. We'll get you going with that.
That's one thing I was going to mention, was that if you are not quite sure what an advisory group is for, it is our community chance to participate in a bigger conversation to help direct where DNN will go within these facets, and what things we feel are important or we see are important, to help get a voice heard and have an opportunity to help direct change. So if you want to be involved, even if you're a flower on the wall just listening, that's fine. Participate and get in there. Even if you throw in your 2 cents, that 2 cents will add up over time. So these 4 groups are 4 different directions, and like Clint was saying, participate. Talk with him, and he can help get you connected to the right people.
Yeah, and again, it's very I don't know if the word fun or nice or whatever, but like to watch a group of passionate people like really debating topics and talking about, it's good to see. It does me good. I've heard rumors of Chris Hammond, may gonna be coming out with some more videos. I can't really speak on that with absolute certainty, but I've heard rumors. And I think that's it. I mean, everybody's looking forward to DNN Summit. DNN Connect has been announced. We'll be in Ireland. Yeah, Ryan, you can go to the summit if you want to.
Yep.
And Ryan is in charge of the training courses. So Ryan, would you want to,
Yeah, let me take it back for that. For completely selfish reasons, I want to see as many people as possible in training sessions. So my first thing that we're going to talk about for DNN Summit is that it's not too late to register for training. There are plenty of companies, government agencies, firms who are using DNN, and they need to send people out for training. They need to have them go out of their building, out of their office location, to really hone in and focus on training and improving their skills. Send them out to DNN Summit. That's the place to do it. So we've got other opportunities and other things to talk about for Summit, but I want to start off by saying it's not too late to register for training. We have 4 different types of courses that are all-day courses. There is an intro to DNN. There is an admin. There's a theming and a module development. The intro is the one that I'm teaching, and the main point is some light-level training on a little bit of everything that lets you know how to manage and maintain the content in your DNN website. So if you're an employee who finds yourself managing content in DNN and you don't know how to do certain things, you're going to leave this training session knowing how to do those things. The admin session is everything you want to know about being a DNN administrator. It's a deeper dive into all of the sections and all of the features of managing and maintaining a DNN site as an administrator. The skinning or theming course teaches you from square one all the things to pay attention to and all the tools that you might be interested in using and where to go to find the resources so that you're ready to build modern themes that are ready for DNN 7, DNN 8, DNN 9, and again, making you aware of the things to pay attention to so that you're building efficient skins and themes. Module development is the same thing for general module development. SPA, MVC, a mixture of different approaches, tools that are useful, tips from people who've been through it before, you bringing your real-world questions and getting them answered in front of an instructor. Those are the benefits that you get out of the module development training course. So, again, very heavy advertisement there for training, but it's because I want to see people get the most out of it that they can. There's a lot to DNN Summit. There's a lot of news and information. Again, it's coming up. It is next month. We're going to be heading out there basically the week around Valentine's Day. So we're going to be out there in a little bit less than a month. And there's a lot of exciting news coming up. There's a lot of opportunities to still sign up and participate. Number one, I know that the blocks for hotels are starting to book up. I heard that I believe Thursday is already sold out of the block, so you can either stay there but not in the block or stay somewhere else. But there are other days, just not Thursday, I believe. So booking your hotel room is important. Signing up is important. We have the deadline coming up soon on being able to get a shirt in your size. I believe it's, Clint, is it Monday? Is the cutoff?
Yeah, I think so.
Monday or Friday? It's very soon. Yeah, and so if you sign up after that, of course you can still come to DNN Summit. You might just get the size shirts that we have extra of at that point. There have been some exciting offers that have just been released. Sponsor of DNN Summit, Managed.com, has come up with a special promotion. And if you have not already signed up, then you can sign up with their coupon code, and they will give you credit for the amount of your ticket with hosting services and services from Managed.com.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah, sorry.
Mike Shea has joined the meetup.
Mike Shea from 2 years ago, 4 years ago. No, wait, how long ago?
Yes.
Mike Shea, glad to have you online. Love to see you there, man. Don't know if he's on microphone,
Yeah,
but that is
on,
awesome. Oh, we had to embarrass him and say hi as soon as you saw him come on. Okay, so Manage.com has made a great offer. You know, not only they're participating as a platinum level sponsor, they are doing everything they can to get people out to this conference. They're promoting it, they're encouraging it, and here with this kind of a match type of offer, they are doing everything they can to make it not only worth your while to be there from everything you're going to get at DNN Summit, but monetarily, they're helping you out there. You get that benefit from your choice of things from Manage.com, so that is pretty fantastic. That said, that's kind of my introduction to different things of DNN Summit. Clint, do you have anything you want to add in, and we'll pass it to David after that?
Yeah, I would add in that there's a guy in Huntersville area who's making some really awesome lightsabers that he's taking to DNN Summit. Y'all might know. I don't know.
Good segue and good plug. Okay, let's do it. The reason Clint made sure to do that is because I forget all the time. I forgot in Christmas time. I forgot last year to promote the DNN Saber. Very short version. People make lightsabers. It's a thing. Google it and you can find out more about them. Or look at the Southern Fried website and you can see our article post from last year's DNN Summit Saber. But I enjoy building them. I put the electronics into them and the light into them. And people make crossover lightsabers where they'll take and make an Iron Man lightsaber or a Joker lightsaber or some things like that. And I thought, how can I make a DNN lightsaber? And would any geeks really like to have one of those? And it turns out they would. It was a very popular thing. From last year's DNN Summit, I made the DNN Summit Saber. We'll post a link to that article in today's post. But I'm making 3 sabers for DNN Summit 2018, and one of those is available in a giveaway for everyone who attends the show. So everyone who attends can have a raffle ticket for the DNN Summit Saber 2018. And just to show you a little bit about what goes on in these, shoot, I can't see my video.
Yeah.
I know, but I gotta see where I'm going here. So etching has been a big part of what I've been doing for these, and I've done some test etching to see what methods are really going to show up on what kinds of metal. and this really pops because it's silver on black, of course. But some of these I'm quite proud of, and this is the actual hilt of the DNN saber. Let's see if I can get this in the right place.
Yeah, there you go.
Here we go. All right. Can you see that shine there? And the details on this came through very well. There were 2 or 3 different methods and attempts at getting it to be very clear. But the one that I'm most proud of is this one. And when you see it in person, it is very impressive. Very large original DNN logo with a swirl around it on the base here, and then on the neck of it here,
You're doing that so well.
DNN.
You're looking at the. You should be a weatherman.
Right, you got those pretty hands. You should be a hand model.
That's my photography background.
Also, you could advertise that as a life-size Eric VB DNN logo tattoo as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I love that. My third one, just to put it on screen here, this one has gold anodized aluminum accents to it, but yeah, this one also has that sharp DNN new logo.
Michael Elbeck would be impressed.
DNN sharp logo? Nice.
Yeah, absolutely. It is very, very nice. So those are coming along nicely. We'll have some more posts for those as they get released. So if you're geeking out over it, make sure you register to possibly win the DNN Summit Saber. But check out the videos. I'll be posting them on the SoFry website. The other thing to mention that we are doing as a promotion or an award that you can win for attending DNN Summit is that last year we did travel awards. I wanted to kind of celebrate that theme of community of people coming from a long distance or through hardship to get to DNN Summit. And in all the conferences, we've always had people come from a long distance or talk about how long it took them to get there. So we created 2 awards last year, and they were travel awards. One of them was for internal national travel, and the other one was for international travel. And we had people basically spend about 24 hours in travel and come all the way from Africa to DNN Summit. This year we're doing the same thing, but then we have 3 other types of awards that we're doing, and I want to mention them now so that you'll think about it and bring your registrations. I want to see the oldest DNN instance. There's the Classic Award. So it's not just can you stand up an iBuySpy. I want to know that it's in use and an active website.
Oh, so it can be iBuySpy?
It absolutely can be iBuySpy.
Or
I will count that.
.NET News.
No, I will count it. But then number 2, the DNN instance with the most portals. We have Rut Scarborough here in Southern Fried. He has a DNN instance of about 400 or 500 portals, and he would certainly be our local contestant for that. I want to see who else can beat that. But then the other third one is the most users in a portal. They don't have to be active users, but I don't want to see a library put in place. But let's see, 100,000 users plus. Let's see who's got the most DNN users in an active website. So we have several awards and fun things that we're planning for DNN Summit. David, do you have any things to add in there for DNN Summit in general?
No, not really.
Right.
But do you have that little teaser at some point?
We're gonna bring it back to David at the end. We've got a good teaser for part of what we're gonna be doing in March. So we'll come back to that, and we'll remember. In fact, I could bring up that link as one of the final tabs, and that'll help us make sure we get there. Okay, so Clint, unless you have anything else, I'm going to bring us into the topic of the evening, which is our module licensing conversation. Clint, did you have anything else that we missed, either DNN Summit or you mentioned DNN Connect? Anything else community before we move forward?
I think that's it, sir.
All right.
One thing, we are going to have a webinar on theming in February after Summit, maybe the week or so after Summit. We haven't announced it yet, but it's coming. Okay. It's going to have Jeff Barlow, Tracy Wittenkeller, and who's the other one I'm missing? Ralph, MC McRalphify is going to show up.
That is fantastic.
So that's on the horizon, and that's my last thing.
Okay. It's a good thing to mention that we won't have an active Southern Fried meeting here in February because we'll all be at DNN Summit during that period of time. Wait, except for one person. One important person is not going to be at DNN Summit. Where's he going to be? Clint, where are you going to be in February?
Well, I could show you a picture, but yeah, I'm not going to be at DNN Summit.
Clint's going to be here. Clint's going to be here because he is expecting, and we will send out all of our congratulations there in the month of February. But the rest of us will be out at DNN Summit.
Be sure to tweet. Be sure to tweet a lot of pictures from DNN Summit so that I can, kind of vicariously live through you from the delivery room.
You got it. We'll hold up a couple of free drinks in your name.
Yeah.
Okay.
All the homies.
Okay, so we won't have a DNN Southern Fried DNN user group meeting in February because again we'll be at Summit, and so at the end of the meeting we'll talk a little bit about that. But our next active meeting will be in March. Okay, so tonight's meeting is really in the spirit of a roundtable discussion. We will be actively talking about, and I'll sit on my hands at some point and stop talking so much to let everyone else who's online with us put in their 2 cents and talk about these ideas. But this is a conversation that I have run across and participated in at almost every DNN conference, at every community event we've been in. It comes up at some point in time to talk about how difficult it is for one person to handle licensing their module, or they have this available but they don't have that, and how could they get it? Does anyone know? And so conversations around module licensing and methods for that happen all the time. And what I'd like to do is put our community effort forward in talking about what's important about it, what's good about what we've seen in the past, what's bad about what we've seen in the past, what would we like to have in the future. Would we like to have licensing built into the core of DNN or into the core of the store system? There are a lot of ideas that are floated out there, and let's talk about those. To begin with, one thing that I wanted to do was share a little bit about what I've seen. Again, as a DNN integrator, we've seen a lot of different ways that there are module licensing out there, and this is by no means an exhaustive list. This is no means everything perfect or everything good, but this is a handful of ones that came instantly to mind when I wanted to point out, or thinking about pointing out, different ways that people have approached module licensing. So to kick off the conversation, what I'm going to do is run through these and talk about them a little bit, but then I will put out a few questions and put it to the group and put it to conversation. So to begin with, let me talk a little bit about different ways that I've seen module licensing approached and what's important, I think, about those. I'm going to talk about a handful of modules that we use and use often enough that, again, instantly they came to mind as different ways or different methods that I've seen for module licensing. To begin with, in the topic of module licensing, there is the debate over how you license, whether that is per a single DNN instance, or whether that is per portal or per domain name, because there is a difference between being per portal or being per domain name. Some have been per domain name, or making other ones inactive or maybe disabled in one way or another if they're not on the primary licensed domain. There are questions of recurrence and how you license that module. Is that a one-time purchase and that's it? Is there a subscription model to it and you renew that every year? What happens if you don't renew? Do you retain active functions in that module? So we'll talk about that a little bit. There's the method of the license, whether to be active and activate, you must connect to a server. If you can't connect to a server or you're in an environment where you cannot do that, is there a manual way of connecting? But then also, if there is a licensing server involved, must that licensing server be active and accessible, or does it brick your module if it's not accessible? And that has been a problem in the past, and we'll talk about that just a little bit. So, jumping into some of the examples, I have some screenshots of things that I wanted to run through and just give as descriptions. I'm starting with Xmod Pro just as an example. If Kelly's able to join, certainly chime in. Would love to hear his thoughts about that. Anecdotally, I'll share that I believe that Peter Donker was involved in helping him get this module licensing method active and running. With the XMod Pro example of how you fill out a license and how you register it, you install the module. When you license it, it is per DNN instance, so it covers any number of portals on that DNN instance. But what you are sent by email is a license key. You take that license key, you put that into the module. There is a trial, so you can put in your email address and put in a trial that will then start it up for, I believe, 15 days. But if you're not doing a trial, you put in your license key and you click to activate. At that point, it communicates with the license server, licenses up, and comes back as completed, having then generated a license file on the local machine. If you cannot connect to that licensing server, that's okay. I've certainly seen it in environments behind VPNs or certain types of corporate situations. That server cannot connect out for licensing. And in that situation, there's a backup, which is a manual activation method. And that manual activation method means that you can then generate a key, go to the XMod Pro website, get back your reciprocal key, put that in, and do a manual activation. In that way, it's restricted and it's secure, but it doesn't handcuff you if you can't do an online active licensing. To my knowledge, the XMod Pro one does not require a licensing server to be active and online for it, so that if that was unreachable for some reason or down, the module wouldn't go out of being in license. So that's a plus in that structure or in that setup. One of the next ones to kind of move on to, I want to go in order here, are the Mandeeps modules. Mandeep. I say Mandeeps just because that's .com, but Mandeep Singh. Mandeep has some of the more popular modules that have been around a very long time, and to my knowledge, this has always been the licensing method that Mandeep has had in place, and it is very smooth. There really aren't any hiccups that I've ever experienced in using this licensing method. For Mandeep, it is per DNN instance. It is a one-time permanent type of assignment. If I didn't mention that before with XMod Pro as an example, it is a one-time registration of a license key, but you can reuse those if the other website goes away or is done with. You can transfer those around to other locations. With Mandeep's items, they are one-time permanent, and the method or the way that that one follows is that you have a module installed. You have the ability to activate that license. When you do so, it asks you to pick what type of license you had. That's a little bit of what you've done when you bought that particular module, whether it was a standard edition or an enterprise edition. At that point, you've purchased it, and you can request an activation key. When you request an activation key, you are communicating with the Mandeep location to then send you a license key for this specific DNN instance. So once you have made a request, you put in the email address that you used when you purchased that particular module. So there's protection against anybody doing this, obviously. And when you receive back your email, it is an activation key that you drop in place, and you then license this module. That activation key is not for you to use again and again and again and again. If you have an enterprise license, of course, you have license to put this on multiple different DNN instances, but you request a new key for each instance because that key is tied to that particular DNN instance. If you move servers and do some things like that, you might need to relicense it again, but it is a one-time licensing type of action. Okay, so next on the list, Evativa has a different type of licensing structure, and if you don't use Evativa items, you might not have seen this idea or this method before. But their licensing is per DNN instance. Here specifically, I'm going to show you the Evativa backup modules, and they have a mix of one-time and subscription type license. And that's interesting, and I really haven't seen anyone else do it this specific way before. So with Evativa, when you license their backup software, if you buy one instance for a DNN instance, then you get an activation key, you put that in place, you're done. You've bought that one item. It does have a year-long renewal period where you can download the newer versions and still get that newer version of that module. And once that year is up, you have one running instance that is now licensed to use that particular module. Myself, for instance, I've purchased the Enterprise Edition. It's a higher cost, but for that, I'm able to use that for a year because it is a year-long subscription. You can also buy 2-year subscriptions, which I do often enough. Because what you do is, if you bought a 1-year subscription and you let that subscription expire, you have one that translates or transfers into one DNN instance that you can be running on. If you buy that Enterprise and you keep it going, then you can install it on as many different DNN instances as you want, as long as you have an active subscription. Once that active subscription expires, it reverts to allowing you one DNN instance. So it's kind of like you have a subscription model. You can pay for a year or multiple. If you decide to let that lapse, that's okay. You still have one full version instance that's perpetual that comes out of that subscription. So it's a mixture of a subscription type structure. Licensing, as far as the licensing file is concerned, is when you get to that particular site, you drop in your license key, which is an XML-based key. It has your name, your information in it. You don't have to go to their server or make a request to get that. You use that same key on as many different sites as you want to while your subscriptions are active. So Evativa has a very interesting mixture compared to others. You know, when we look at some of these as examples, you must connect to their server to license that, and it must take a look at some things. But as far as comparisons are concerned, there isn't a manual activation version exactly because you're putting in a licensing key right there and then, so it's not necessary to have a manual activation. And to my knowledge, it doesn't have to maintain a link to an active server for the module to run. Now, if you're going to install it in another location, then yes, of course, their licensing server does need to be still running and active. Evativa is very interesting. Interactive Webs is also very interesting in the way that they've approached it. The Advanced Login module is one that we use on a lot of different websites. And for the list of comparisons, it's the first one that I'm going to mention that isn't a license per DNN instance. Their license is per domain name. It's not per portal. It is per domain name. And that's an important distinction in that it's not one portal that has 15 domains. It is one specific domain name within that specific portal. And it is a one-time registration when you license this, but it is reassignable because out of the list of ones that they have, they are one of the only ones that have a license manager on the Interactive Webs website. So you can go to their website to see all of your managed licenses, and you can reassign them. Now, you can only reassign them once, but it's a good example of something that's kind of different from the way others have approached licensing. So to begin with, if you load up their module, you can see your active licenses. If you see a module where it is not licensed, or you load that module under a domain that isn't licensed, then you can see this message that says, you know, your trial has expired. Please select licensing from the module menu. It doesn't stop the module from working fully. It does work. Underneath is allowing a user to normally log in with their DNN username and their password. So it doesn't completely brick the module, but it does have to be a domain name that is within the license. Here is a screen of my own copy, my own account, and this is showing you their license manager. And again, not many other DNN module developers have this type of structure that I'm aware of. Within it, you can see what module it is that you have a license for. You can see where you purchased it from. Did you purchase it directly? Did it come from Snow Covered? That's the DNN store. Did it come from a direct purchase at Interactive Webs? What email address was used for licensing it? But more importantly, what domain is currently licensed? And can you reassign it? Because without talking to them, they allow you to reassign every license one time. So technically you can use it twice to, for an old website, that website gets shut down, you can convert it to another website. That's a flexibility that's very nice, and I can imagine on their side lowers the overhead of people contacting them to say, hey, can you free up this license? I want to assign it to something else. It's a very flexible way for you to manage your own license and work with it. Finally, who else is here? ZodN, just as an example, just showing another license module. When I look at this one, for example, this one is connected directly to or tied directly to what you purchased in the DNN store. And that's the other most popular way that we see licenses and licensing configured, in that you don't have to put in your email address, you don't have to put in anything else but your invoice number from Snow Covered, from DNN store. Once you put in your invoice number, it looks it up within their information and it licenses that particular instance. Here, ZodN does happen to have a manual activation page, so that if they can't connect and look up their invoice number, then you're able to take an activation code, go to their website, fill it out, and come back. So in that situation where you do need to check with an external server, if you're in an environment that cannot, they do provide a backup way to do it manually. So I spent a good amount of time kind of walking through different types of licensing methods, different types of licensing in how it affects the user, the consumer, when they are licensing that module. But there's a lot more to this, especially behind the scenes for the module developer, for the company that has to run these licensing servers and have them running, and that's where we start to take our conversation. Basically, we're going to turn it over now to open conversation in the group, and looking at things. I've kind of spent a little bit of time, and it's been long enough he's fallen asleep. Let me wake him up. It's been long. Sorry, I'll start again. we have several folks online with us tonight. We want to have their conversation and their thoughts on all of these, but we have some other things to throw in here too as well. So let me set the stage, and then I'm going to be quiet and turn it over. First off, we've invited Mandy to join us today. I don't know if he's online yet. David, he does. So we'll turn it on so that Mandy can throw in some ideas and some suggestions and what he'd love to see. We'd love to hear about it. I invited Kelly Ford. I'm not sure if he's able to participate or is on. We invited some folks from other locations, and we've got some responses in, and where they fit into the conversation, I'm going to have David read off some responses that we've gotten. We got some responses from WeWeave.net. They were presenters at DNN Connect, and very specifically, they have a module licensing module, a system that you can use to integrate into your own DNN instance and into your development, so that you can have a ready-made licensing service that you are running. And so we want to hear a little bit about that, and he provided us with kind of a block of comments and thoughts. There are other ones that are out there. Their presentation of this is kind of new on the scene last year. But there are others who've been around for a while. License Master 2.2, that was Paul Taylor, was invited to join us. He had a conflict, so he wasn't able to join us tonight. But we'll talk about that one a little bit. David has used this module in one of the modules
Don't tell anybody
that he's developed, and he has some 2 cents to add into it. DNN Masters, who have been around for a very long time, have their own system that's called the Fusion Licensing System. That's available for purchase on the DNN store today. You can still find this module for purchase and use it. So there are some out there, and we kind of want to talk about these. But I'll kind of bring it around to throw out the first question and start that conversation. And Mandy, we'll probably open it up to you to first chime in with some ideas. But basically, where it has been in the past and where we are going in the future is what we want to talk about today. from where it has come in the past, I know that module developers have been on their own to invent or to develop their own module licensing systems and to, for themselves, decide what they feel is important, what they feel are, non-acceptable handcuffs to sometimes put onto users and purchasers. And they've had to come up with their own decisions on what they want to do, how strict they want to be, how allowing they want to be, and then how they want to implement. So, Mandeep, you started at a time when you were certainly inventing this on your own. I'd love to hear your thoughts a little bit about what was it like when you started, what was the ecosystem's, view on it at the time, and you went a very particular way, and I don't think I've seen other people go that particular way, but yours is also very solid. So it's a working, known winner, proven winner in the way that you've approached it.
It seems like to me it's very similar to the way that Bruce Chapman used to do things
with Ifinity URL rewriting.
Yes, Ifinity.
Absolutely. So, Mandy, take it away. Give us your thoughts on where it came from and how it was when you started licensing.
Sure. So we've been around a very long time. I think we started licensing our products probably close to a decade ago, I believe, or maybe 8-9 years ago. So initially, when we started, we didn't have any kind of licensing system built in, and that prevented us from actually getting the product into hands of our customer until they actually purchase it. So that was the biggest hurdle, that we wanted to go ahead and offer some kind of trial and that could be then licensed and activated. We don't want it to maintain multiple builds, a trial build that kind of expires and then a production build. So we wanted a single branch that can do both. So that's how we jumped into licensing. Obviously, the concern being is, well, we should get compensated for the hard work we're doing. So we do need to have licensing in place, some way to make sure that people are following the licensing model. Having said that, we were and we still are not very heavily into making sure that people are not abusing our licensing. We feel that majority of the people don't, and if you have something very basic in place, it's sufficient enough to take care of it, and rather spend our energy in building better products or newer products than to enforcing that. So that's how we really got into licensing. At that time, in the ecosystem, there was basically this concept of standard and enterprise edition, and we kind of adopted that, where standard, you can use the product on a single DNN install, unlimited portals and domains, and enterprise meant you can use it on unlimited DNN installs. So that is something we weren't very happy with when we got into it, but that was some of the other vendors were doing at that time, even though they didn't have licensing in place, like even ZodN, DNN, and other vendors were doing it. So we kind of adopted that and went forward with it. Let's see. So
one thing you mentioned too that I kind of forgot about, but early on there were very distinctive trial versions of modules and production versions of modules, and there was the concern of, oh wait, did I install the trial? I got to uninstall it now and install the live version when I license it. And as licensing grew up with all the different modules, that kind of went away, and everyone wanted that single install. For
us, it was very important that customer has a good experience, because we were seeing some vendors and some questions in the community. Hey, we got a trial version, now we want to buy it. Is our data going to stay in there when we install the production, or we have to start from scratch? So some of those particular things were solved with a single branch. The another most important thing for me from customer service perspective is we really wanted the business from any customer when they were perceiving that we're adding value to their bottom line. So that's why we wanted to make sure they have trials in hand and they can actually install the product, use it. When they think it's adding any value, then they go and purchase it. Versus they're purchasing it, now they get their hands on the module, because prior to this they were only looking at either documentation or some videos, and now they think it's not a good fit for them, and now they want a refund. So we wanted to change the entire life cycle of how that works. So it's worked great for us. I mean, we don't even track our refund rates because they're negligible. They're non-existent. So that really does an awesome job for us because of that.
And simplicity is a big part of what your module licensing actions have to it. There's a very simple, there might be several steps, but they're very simple, straightforward. You request an email to be sent, you get your key, you put it in. Have you seen that, obviously you haven't changed it over time, so it's working. But have you seen that people feel it's simple, and did you try something before that was more complicated and I just didn't see it?
No, that's how we started it. It was simple enough. It works wonder for us over the years. It's actually perfect time to bring this topic up because we just released our new theme today.
Right.
Maybe yesterday or today, Portal 4. And it has a new licensing user interface in it. The model is still the same, but we've tried to do something new with the licensing, and I'll explain some of the reasons why we did that. So over the years, our products grew from handful to over a couple dozen of products that we have, and we bundled these in collections. We got collections that sometimes have 35 products in them. Now, so from taking client feedback, imagine having them go through and activate each product, even though it's 2 or 3 steps. It's a painful, long process to keep typing an email address and a request key. So that's where we finally decided after 8 years that because our own product line is growing, we need to do something about licensing to make this convenient for the customer. So it's gotten even easier. Now you click on an Activate button, it checks every product that you have installed from mandeeps.com on your site. It'll show you a nice license manager, shows you their status. If they're licensed, it doesn't bother showing them unless you want to see them. But you can show it. You have 6 products that are in trial or expired. And with one click, you can activate them all with that single activation key.
Interesting.
So we've taken it actually a step forward, and we don't want users to be fiddling with a bunch of activation data that comes through an email and then pasting it in. So even that step is gone. You put an email address, and it's activating. So that does bring a concern for us that we'll see in real life how it works. Supposedly, if you know someone's email address, which has some licensed version, you can start abusing it. But we got checks in place that anytime you activate a product, an email will still go out to the licensed person, letting them know what got activated, what instance, who did it, what IP address, what domain name.
It's kind of like when somebody logs into your Google account. You get an email that says, hey, we detected a login from a place that we don't think you're normally at. Was this you?
Funny.
If it was you, don't worry about anything. But if it wasn't you, please let us know.
That's exactly what the email says. So it gives them a bunch of data that they can, we call it activation data instead of keys now because it's just a jumble of bunch of numbers that you can save for future references if you ever need it. But you don't need to go copy and paste it anywhere. It kind of activates in one click for you. And like you said, in the bottom it says, hey, if you did not request this, contact us immediately. So we can go ahead and take
it. And as a concept, moving to this single group activation makes sense where as a development provider, a module provider, you have so many different modules that you are, like you said, again, selling them in bundles or putting them in groups. And someone's not just installing 1 or 2 modules, they're installing 7 to work together in a grouping. One licensing unified between them all, that's really nice.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a question I'm reading by Kelly, I believe, what if you just wanted to activate a couple of the trials and not the others? Absolutely. So you're presented with a list of modules. You can hit one checkbox to select them all, or you can individually select the ones you want to activate. So you have that flexibility there. Coming back to your question, wait, I just lost the question. I'm so sorry.
No worries. No worries. No, go ahead.
You were talking about one unified licensing. So yeah, I was gonna get a point. We actually, the vision is we don't want our customers who purchase the bundle to take 35 different products and install them individually. So very soon we're gonna have a unified way of installing them too, where you can go ahead and install all 35 products in one go. We're not doing anything proprietary. At the end of the day, they'll still be listed as different modules in the DNN platform. You will be able to uninstall them individually. But we want to do whatever we can for our customers to save them time, especially a lot of customers who are using our products in enterprise. A lot of web open companies who use them on a daily basis. there's really no need for them to spend half an hour installing modules and activating them. It should really be a single one-click process. So that's where we're heading, especially with our themes. Our themes are bundled with some of our modules, so people can go ahead and import the theme template. Now they have a ready-made site with the theme installed, 35 modules installed, and they can hit one button to get everything activated. So the whole process can be done in less than 5 minutes.
David, you were going to...
yeah, I was going to say, I mean, just commenting since Mandy was talking here, it's like, one of the things that's made his successful, I think, is I'm up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I have got to get that module on the client site because I forgot it or whatever, Well, they're not open, so I do not want to send a request for a license and have to wait, a day. So one of the things that they've been successful, I mean, as long as email is working, it's going to activate and all that kind of stuff. So, I was just curious, isn't that kind of the experience that we want? Is an instant activation.
That should have been a column in the spreadsheet of, does a human need to review that activation request? And if it's automated, that makes a big difference. And the best ones are automated.
And one of our pain points in one of the products we have in the store is that we're utilizing a system that relies on the DNN store to notify us when that purchase is made and to automatically issue that license and give the client instructions on that. No, we have to go in and manually activate that license almost every time now because it's broken. So, it's nice to have something that's outside of that dependency.
So that's a good segue into talking about integration with external elements. And there's certainly something to be said for keeping as much in-house as possible, because then you have complete control over it. And that's understandable.
Before we go there, I wanted to add just one more quick thing. On your spreadsheet, there was a column whether the licensing server needs to be online for the modules to continue to work. And I noticed for ours, it was blank. So I just wanted to, for the record, let everyone know that is not the case for us. The only time you need to reach out to our licensing server is when you're requesting a key. So periodically, the module does check back to make sure nothing has been tampered. But for whatever reason, it cannot get to the server, or the server is down or no longer exists. There's absolutely no difference to the operation of the module. Because it has its own local licensing file, it needs to refer to that and work on that.
So let me take that as a better segue, and I'll come back around to the other one that I was going to mention in a moment.
I have one more question from Mark, if I want to just answer that before I actually go forward.
That's the roundtable. Do it.
So Mark's asking a question: if you have an enterprise license of our products and they're all over the place, you could have 10, 20, 30 installations. Is there a way for you to log in and see, for example, I believe you showed interactive webs that you could log in and see. So, Mark, to answer your question, that is coming up soon. We actually worked on that on our own site, but we held it back. For those of you that don't know, we're working on an e-commerce product, so we are doing our level best to get that dog fooding on our own site, and we kind of built it into our own as an extension to our own e-commerce system. So we didn't want to redo the work, so we held off on that. But to answer your question, Mark, that is coming soon. You'll be able to log into Mandeep.com and then see all of your licenses, whether you bought them from DNN Store or through our site, and you can see where they're deployed.
That is good. That is very, very good. Well, so talking about that licensing server, there are different types of usage in which that licensing server might be pinged or accessed on activation. There are also situations where that licensing server has to be online. It has to be running and communicating correctly. Otherwise, the active use of that module is blocked or diminished in some way, or displays a licensing message to an admin, or worse, displays a licensing message to the public. And we've all run across different scenarios where that's been a problem. And from experience, I'll mention two of them and then kind of throw it out to the community to talk about, in that I feel that it's generally considered that having a live server to use your module is a bad idea. I feel like everyone feels like that's a bad idea, but It happens a lot. So I'm not sure if I'm just thinking of it from a user perspective and I feel that it's a bad idea, but from protecting your license, it's a necessary evil. And that may be the case. But I'll give one good example for a product that's not around anymore. It was called InduGrid. It was a module that allowed for kind of rapid development. We looked at it at one point in time as a different way to do things as compared to Xmod Pro for just doing custom development. And InduGrid went out of business. Their website stayed running for a little while after they closed shop, but then their website went away. It closed down. The day it closed down, that module was no longer functional. It worked as long as you didn't need to change a thing. But the minute you opened up the edit screen on that module, it checked the licensing server to make sure it was licensed, and it wouldn't allow you to use that module anymore. So if you had everything done and you had everything you wanted to leave it alone, then it still works today. But the second you open up that edit screen, it does not work anymore. And again, it's because of that licensing server and the way they built it. Great for their protection, but bad for consumers, bad for people who were using that module. They paid for something. It's still working on their DNN instance. Now that the company went out of business, now they don't have a module to use. And I feel like that's a downside that we need to see go away. I think that diminishes confidence in modules and trying new modules and understanding that if there are these different licensing methods out there, you don't worry that there's a gotcha. If that company goes away, that you then lose this module that you perhaps were relying on. A more modern example was with hotcakes. We are partners with hotcakes. We support and promote hotcakes, have been using paid versions of licenses when there was 1.0 and 2.0 versions of hotcakes. Had a few license problems where through no change in the DNN instance, but changes in the licensing server location, we had an Xmod hotcakes instance become unlicensed. And worse, when we saw that it was unlicensed, we went and reactivated it, and then things went back to normal, except that they didn't. They went into a demo mode, and for a few days, this e-commerce system was selling products in a demo mode that wasn't actually real. It was the worst possible type of setup. Now, that was because of a licensing server change as they moved to them being open source. And now there is no licensing server. So that's not an issue that affects hotcakes today. But it's something that's an example that you have to plan for how your licensing server is involved. And if there's a problem on your end, how does it affect the consumers of your modules? And are you thinking forward on that? And I'd like to put that out to the group in that we realize it's a necessary evil. It's not an evil. It's a control that needs to be in place. Do people have ideas and thoughts? Hey, Will maybe is chiming in there. Will, do you want to come on speaker and talk about that one? You mentioned it's from where the licensing server was or something of the sort?
So he was saying it's not where it was the licensing server name changed.
Yes, yeah,
so,
something
yeah,
like that.
So
yep.
it's semantics, but yes.
Yeah, I can understand that, yeah. And so I was putting it out to the group and to anyone who wants to chime in. Licensing servers, do they have to be online just to activate? Do they have to be online to use the module? Do they have to be online to just edit the module? We've seen some different ways it's handled. Let's talk good, bad, and otherwise.
I could add a couple things as in some of the practices that we use. So foremost, our licensing model, it only depends on the licensing server to initial activation. That can also be done manually, so you don't really necessarily need that. And then after that, I mean, it periodically it does its verification, but there's absolutely no reliance on the server whether it exists or does not exist. So taking that step forward, some of the other best practices we want to follow and what we do is we also don't want to make sure that we're checking our licensing on every hit. I mean, that's a big performance issue. Even if you have local licensing files, even if you're not talking to a web server, I mean, even if it's just a licensing file that you're reading, who wants to read a license for on every hit? So what we do Can you still hear me?
Yes, yes, yeah.
Okay. So what we do is we only check the licensing once in the entire life cycle of the application of the DNN when DNN starts, and obviously that changes if you're actually activating the product or doing something. But we're only checking the licensing once, and that gets cached somewhere, which we refer to every time. So that's one more thing I want to add on if there's someone who wants to build their own licensing. So make sure performance becomes a big issue, especially, for example, in our case, let's say you got 24 of our modules installed, and there's, let's say, 6 of them on one page. You don't want to check 6 different licensing files just because someone wants to hit the page. So
Absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
another consideration when you're looking at licensing. Now, imagine if someone was actually actively talking to a web server. That would be a disaster. So.
Yeah. Kelly, you've joined us. We're going to look forward to having you on even more in March to present and talk about some things. But Kelly's with Smithcart and Smith Consulting, and obviously you've got some licensing some licensing model that's also been around quite a long time. How do things work for yours, and what are your thoughts on active license server and the need to check in on that?
Okay, so Smithcart is gone, so let's talk about RazorCart. So with RazorCart, it's basically the same premise. So we license by domain name. The license, you request the license on our site, and we were talking a little bit earlier during this roundtable about does a human need to see it. So currently, yes, we're working toward moving away from that. But as far as having licenses that phone home, that's a non-issue unless you're upgrading to a version that you're not licensed for. The version number is what's going to control if that license is phoning home to check if it's revoked, or if you've upgraded a version that you're not eligible for.
That makes sense. And the idea of having a human need to check it, there are reasons for that. Maybe you are allowing special circumstances to give people more than what they purchased for, or you have situations in which they purchased the wrong thing and you need to review it with them to make sure it's the right thing. It's not that a human being involved is always a bad thing. Sometimes it is necessary. So in the past you found that, something that you needed to do for a reason, right?
Yeah, so it gives us an extra opportunity to connect with our customers, which I love. I'm really big on customer service. So being able to, myself personally, reach out to the customers that bought the license and say, hey, if you need help with your products or if you've purchased the wrong product. I mean, I like to think we're pretty generous about swapping products out too. We were also talking about can licenses be reissued earlier. So we allow a license to be reissued up to 1 calendar year after the initial purchase. So you have a client, you bought a RazorCart license or a Registration Pro license for this client, and the project got dumped, and now you're stuck. So we do allow licenses to be reissued one time. And again, having that human interaction, looking over, hey, this license key or this order ID or a DNN store, so this invoice ID, we've already generated a license for this. What's going on? Okay, did I talk to this person on the phone? Is this a reissue? We have a lot of add-on modules, so getting to talk to the customer also provides an opportunity to upsell as a module vendor.
And that's a good thing when you're helping them meet something that maybe they haven't realized is another piece of the puzzle that they need to fill in. Well, so kind of continuing on with the curation of where we're going through for this conversation. Let me pause for just a moment, and Clint or David, do you have any questions or conversation points from chat window or from people who are online that want to join in before I kind of take us in a new direction here?
I think most of them have been responded to either in chat or live.
Well, so we did have a couple of responses that came in, and I thought it might be a good time to mention those. We had Jonas and Barlow both giving us statements about not only their systems and things they think are important, but experiences they've had. Do you have those on hand that you could kind of read a little piece of this?
Yeah, let me start with Jan Jonas's first, who presented last year. I think you mentioned at DNN Connect, and they have an open source commerce solution for licensing. So you can grab this and integrate it with your modules if you're looking at making commercial licensing available. Some of his bullet point or conversation points were that they license by domain because this is clear to the users and domains are stable. In contrast, host goods are hard to understand and can change when migrating or reinstalling the system. Good point there. They include subdomains in the licenses because that's what they're often used for testing or staging or QA or dev or whatever those type of environments. They're generated with the main domain that you have, and then all subdomains are included. The module is only able to, or should be able to validate the license offline. So without the need of a licensing server, otherwise you would run into network firewall problems, or in the worst case, the licensing server is down and nothing works. They use a signature on their licenses to enable the module to verify the license.
Locally. Right.
Locally.
Yeah.
But it is not, I don't want to get too much coverage in here in a second, but after purchasing the license, for example, in the DNN store, the clients automatically get an email with login information to their customer portal. The license generation, entering a domain, and getting a key can be done inside the portal itself. The system is available as open source, as we mentioned earlier, and they offer that if anybody is interested in looking into that, they're happy to help and support that. A connector to the DNN store is included out of the box, but you can also connect to other marketplaces or payment providers that you would like to use. Their system is built on Node.js, and they provide a Docker container for it. They do have different license types.
Now, right. I was going to say, when you first brought their setup to my attention, there was a page on the DNN Connect where there was a presentation that was given. Did you end up finding that or making that, you knew that it was public and visible again to watch that presentation, or was that not able to be worked out?
The PowerPoint is available on the DNN Connect site.
Okay.
Just go to the 2017 event, find the session on Jan Jonas's session, and his slide deck is there.
So we'll make sure to link that in tonight's notes and information so that everyone can get to that, because being an open source option that's available is a big deal. And so if you're module developers that are out there wanting to, having to broach this issue, this could be a way for you to follow others' leads and use something that's already been set up with certain proven results.
They do have some license types built in, like trial, support for a 30-day trial in there, as well as lifetime, so does not expire type thing, and a 1-year upgrade type scenario as well. Their experience so far is that it works really great. They do have a few cases where the customers contact and ask for a license key because they did not want to wait for the email with the login data to the portal. But that's really the only real drawback that they've seen so far. Sometimes they do get faulty order notifications from the DNN store. The option name is missing, as it seems that there's a bug in the store. Recently, the tickets for it is still under investigation. I
remember hearing about that.
So, and I think that's some similar things that we're running into as well. But it's not. The information we're looking to get from it is
missing on that message or information coming through, so it doesn't trigger what it's supposed to trigger.
Exactly.
Right. Now, Jeff Barlow was one of the other folks that chimed in with some things for us to. They couldn't make it, so they gave us some thoughts and some opinions to also put into the conversation.
Yeah, so this is more of random thoughts about some of these things, not about any specific system or anything like that. But 3 years ago, started searching a lot and ended up buying and using the DNN Masters Fusion license module, and a bit of a pain to use is the feedback, no docs. And every time they tried to sell a module, they had to manually set up the license and send it to the buyer. Very similar experiences to the other out-of-box solution. And not best solution because a licensing server that needs to be on 100%
On all the time.
Last year, they're mentioning Jan Jonas's
presentation
from last year, and it made him think about creating his own licensing system that won't need a server to check. And then started to search again, started to create a system for licensing, of which was offline and didn't need a licensing server. And he goes into there's a GitHub project that's a serial key manager type thing, which generates a Microsoft-style license key. It's good, but it's restricted on the type of licensing that can be provided. So it's like 1 domain, 3 domains, a period.
Yeah, you have to make the structure.
Yeah. So it's not as flexible in that sense, but it is open system. The FHA1 encryption decryption, which uses public private keys, started licensing based on that session from Jan. And and then there's some other random thoughts about it as well, but that's kind of what path they went down and trying to build a solution for themselves.
I'll use that as a segue into the next direction that I want to lead us as we're talking about things, and that is the question that I've heard come up often enough is let's make a licensing system that is uniform for DNN, or even if every module developer doesn't have to use this standard, possibly core licensing method, at least it's available so that then if you wanted to do something different, you of course could do something different, but to make it available in a standard way so that it was available as a kind of a lower entry bar for developers who do want to prepare their modules for release, put them out in the DNN store, put them out in the community, and they don't want to reinvent the wheel, or they don't have the ability or the time to reinvent that wheel. And so the question then comes up, could there be module licensing as part of the DNN core? And if so, what would that look like? Or if it's not the place of the core and something in core, is that the place of the DNN store and something to be part of the store as an available element to integrate into your development project, so that if you want to come up with something later, of course you come up with something later, but you want to use what we've got, here it is, here are the rules of how to use it, and here are the 3 features out of the box that come available with it. I've participated in that conversation 2 or 3 or 4 times, most recently at DNN Summit, before that DNN Baltimore. I'm tickled by people asking me about it and getting excited with talking with me about it, and I say, oh, hold on, I'm not that developer. I'm a consumer of modules. We consider ourselves integrators. If you've got ideas, I'll jump on that bandwagon all day long and talk about them. I said, but I'm not going to be legs on the ground making this happen. And I guess this meeting is another effort of mine of let's have that conversation. Is it worthwhile? Are we going to see it out there? To some extent, the advisory groups and the things that they are tackling now are going to be talking about this as a talking point. So what do we think, folks? Do we want to see it as part of core? And David, I'm going to pass it to you first because you had some really good thoughts before we started the meeting, really with comparison with other platforms.
Yeah, so several things have come out of some conversations about this. One, a lot of mature marketplaces do have licensing built into their system, but that's just core to the way that their extensions get delivered, plugins or otherwise. So that is in general seen as a good thing. The thing that comes up pretty quickly after that with vendors in our ecosystem is that everybody has their own model. So if a system like that were in place, it would need to support every model
that people want to do,
yeah.
Or support exceptions,
or domain-based,
right,
or machine key-based.
Yeah, we're coming. So I was pointing to you on screen. We're coming to you, Kelly. I want to read off and pass it to you in just a second. But David, finish your statement there.
That's one of the thoughts. It's like it's not an easy endeavor.
Right.
And then even if it was to be put in place at this time, we're obviously a fairly mature ecosystem, right? So would people, or vendors even adopt that new way of doing it, or would they still utilize because obviously everybody's invested
in what they've already built.
Yes.
And I feel that any method that would move forward, if it was in core or in store, in whatever way that there is a uniform licensing model, that it has to allow for exceptions. And it has to allow for that to not be strange or bucking the system or creating problems. It needs to allow for exceptions so that a module developer can continue to do their own thing the way they want to do it, and that still be okay within the system.
So there's the existing vendors,
right,
that already have this, but then when you think that, and I'm bringing this up because Will made it.
I was going to read Will's
note. It's like to onboard new vendors into the system, as soon as they find out there's not a licensing model.
It's another hurdle.
Like, well, exactly. It's
so Will mentioned that the free conference call doesn't work with his system, and it's not letting him talk. So I'm going to read out his words. The great Will
Can you hear me now?
Oh,
yeah,
hey,
I can hear you,
Verizon, absolutely we can.
No, it's Sprint.
Sprint, sorry. Will, read off your quote. I think this was a perfect quote.
Which one?
A uniform licensing system is the only way we can grow the module vendor participation and revenue, provided it includes a subscription model.
Yeah, I know. Like everybody's like come up with their own systems, and at this point, especially folks that have been established, like we're comfortable in our, with our specific license models that we've come up with over the years. But at the end of the day, people that are like, whether it's a developer or a new module vendor company or an end user, when they're coming into our ecosystem, fresh eyes, they will not understand or have patience for 15 different license models and figuring out which module I have to renew when and how and whether or not it's a new version and which server and which duration. And like, they don't have patience for that. We're not going to grow unless we do standardize. We have to. It's going to be something that we need to do. Now
Kelly chimed in with her note of saying that there was a concern. She worries that a uniform licensing method would only work if all vendors adopted the exact same licensing and upgrade policies.
Can I speak to that?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so first, I mean, these are my views, and obviously, SC, we haven't really talked in depth about having a uniform licensing across all DNN vendors, but I feel that not all modules lend themselves to be licensed in the same way or with the same policies regarding domains or upgrades or instances or whatever. And I definitely agree that some form of standardization, maybe in the way that licenses are requested or generated, but no vendor, I mean, if DNN mandates or regulates and we all adopt the same, no vendor, I mean, you said exceptions, right? No vendor is going to want to be the one vendor or the handful of vendors that are the long pole in the tent that have some weird special licensing. Nobody wants to be that person, right? So I just feel like all modules are not created equally. And I mean, we can talk about modules, we can talk about themes. I mean, different types of modules are going to need different policies, different licensings. I mean, we might sell a module that has a, perpetual license, free upgrades forever, and then we might sell a different module that's, free upgrades for all minor versions.
Yeah, whatever. So I agree, and I think that's a valid concern, and that's part of what has to be decided or thought about when going down that path of make sure that it's flexible enough and allows people to do the, the 4 most common or 10 most common, whatever it is, most common needed methods. And if your module doesn't fall into that, fine, you can roll your own. That's the way we are today. You roll your own licensing to fit what you need. Well, lower the bar of incoming developers and incoming people who want to take systems and bring them into the DNN system. Lower the bar for them in module licensing to give them something that says, okay, here are the 4 most common or 5 most common ways. If you don't fall into these, then here's some instructions on what you can do. Here's what other people have done. But at least you get these common ones available to you. Mandeep, I want to pass it back over to you. You had a good, another good point about the idea of a core method of licensing, and it kind of revolves around worrying about who has ultimate responsibility in managing those licensing, revoking, or arbitrating license problems. Mention that here for a second.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really sure if I'm for the idea of having a unified licensing for several reasons, and not saying that I would not even consider it. I think there's just too many challenges and trying to make that feasible, and that's the reason every time the topic came up in the past, we've spent countless hours discussing it, and then we said, let's just leave it at status quo.
That may be, and it may still stay that way for the foreseeable future because of the complexity.
So I would say the first thing is, what's our market? Why do we need a unified licensing? Who are we building it for? Obviously, for people who are developing commercial products of DNN, because if you're working in an enterprise application within the company, you don't need licensing. So then the question is, if we're targeting commercial developers, then this is the segment that is very well capable of building their own licensing. So why would DNN Corp actually go ahead and do this work for them? Question number one. So the second audience is the consumers. So to answer that question is because we want to do this for consumers. So they have a unified licensing, and they don't have to worry about 5 different vendors and 5 different models and so forth.
And they come to one location possibly to look at and manage all of the licenses that they have that are through this common method. So there could be benefits to the individual users, sure.
Absolutely. So here's the pros and cons of that. Let's say we have this one unified licensing, and let's say we have this one group of people in Iran, like Will Stroll was mentioning just a few minutes ago, which figured out a way to bypass your licensing. And now they've bypassed every single vendor and every single module. Absolutely. So my question is, there's pros and cons to both of this. The other issues I have is, if as a business owner, I am going to go ahead and adopt to a licensing model that's mandated by DNN Corp or DNN Store. And let's say even if there's exception, like Kelly was saying, even if there are exceptions, the community kind of expects the vendor to steer in the direction which the Corp or the official DNN Store is kind of requesting. So we have to kind of steer in that direction. And my problem as a decision maker is, why would I take control?
Sorry.
Why would it take the control over our intellectual property and hand it to somebody else? So that is basically saying that now, as a very small developer, I am at the mercy of DNN Corp and DNN Store, because they could change policies at any given time. We could have a group of developers that could influence their way and change the licensing model. And suddenly, our entire business now has to follow that approach. So, as a business owner, I feel this is one decision I think that's best left to the developers on how they want to license their product. I mean, I'm just talking at the bigger concept. I'm not even talking about the functional issues like Kelly mentioned. We have different ways of versioning our modules. For some, minor upgrades are free. For some, they're not. I know Data Springs has a different way of classifying their minor versions than we do. So even if you say minor versions are free, who decides what's a minor version and what's a major version? Do we refer to .NET Framework, or do we refer to what we as developers have been using for past 10 years? It's just a big chaos to kind of put together in a seamless, unified way and find a solution that will make anyone happy. And that's what we've been going back and forth over years, because we're trying to solve this for consumers, but this is a problem of developers.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, both sides of the exchange, both sides of the table have to be satisfied, and it has to make something work for both sides. You can't have something that works for developers but is complicated or bad for the people installing these modules, but at the same time you can't have it great for them but then take control away from the developers. So your implication there of if you were a major module developer that had already your licensing system in place, and this new unified system came out, and a year later you weren't on it, and 2 years later you weren't on it, that there might be a perception that, hey, why haven't they gone on to it? And that would be a bad perception for that developer, and so there would be pressure, social pressure or otherwise, to follow along, and if you disagreed with it, you'd have a problem that you don't have today. I definitely get that idea.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to give an example on what I said. What if licensing models changes, or how do we cope with change? Because when we have control over our own processes, then we have the ability to adopt with change. We could change as quickly as we need to. Let me give an example. 10 years ago, when we adopted that standard in enterprise, the industry basically said enterprise means unlimited DNN install, and it kind of ended there. I believe about 4 or 5 years ago, we realized that is not a sustainable business practice. There's no way in the world we can have people who are still running version 1 of our products that were released 10 or 12 years ago and still expect to run it forever, for eternity. So we changed our licensing model, saying that, yes, unlimited DNN installs, but only for 1 year. The licenses are perpetual. You can run them forever, but you cannot continue to request new licensing. Support and forever. Yeah. You cannot expect us 25 years later to issue new activation keys for the product you bought for $70 25 years ago. So if there was a DNN model or unified way, how would I go and explain the situation and then have them modify? Or if they chose the different direction and were forcing you to support something that you didn't want to support. Absolutely, absolutely. That's exactly my point. Is where what I refer to as keeping the control to ourselves. Understandable, and the idea that if once you relinquish a certain level of control, even though there are benefits, that there can be down the line unforeseen detriment or tough situations that you're put into that you don't have to deal with today because you're not having to be tied to something else external. That makes sense. Let me ask the question then about some of the things that I've seen either Will or some others put into chat. And if this conversation comes up, and it does come up over and over again, Mandeep was saying, we talk about this conversation and we're talking about the developers and we're talking about the consumers and the things that each one of these groups needs. Do we keep having these conversations because some developers have this figured out, and they've spent that time and investment, and they have it available. And for the smaller module developers who want to produce something small, something simple, something that may not be a very large enterprise down the line, but they want to have a minimal licensing method in place, it's a larger hurdle or bar to cover than sometimes producing that functional module can be. I can give an example or two of modules that my company's developed that we put out there free because we want to have them out there free. If we had a more simple way to put them in where I didn't have to prop up a license server, I might have considered making it cost. But at the time, I looked at the hurdle and I said, well, I'll just put it out there as free as part of the community. But partly because that hurdle was high for me, for my group, where that's not our primary thing. Well, so is there a way to get this so that entry-level, newer developers who we want to encourage to come into the DNN ecosystem can have something, and whereas in the past we haven't had it, perhaps this new open source system that WeLeave has put out is our solution. Maybe we stop having this conversation because, hey, now it could get better, and we can make it better because it's open source, but we at least have something. Yeah, maybe that's part of it.
That's looking inside the DNN space itself, right? Mm-hmm. That's where most people are going to look if they're looking to get into this kind of business. But there's also, as Mandy and Kelly mentioned in the chat, there's commercial tools out there. So a lot of it has to do with education. There's commercial tools for licensing, so that you can integrate with your own product. So there are solutions. It's just a matter of educating within this space what those solutions are and how easy they are to utilize.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's something we're missing for sure.
So Will and Pete have had some chat, and I will turn some things over their direction for thoughts and input, and it's about growing that ecosystem and making it easier for people, not because we want to lower the bar, not because we want to lower standards or quality or any of the things that we feel make DNN and our ecosystem great. However, having that hurdle lower so that more people can tackle it and growing the number of new participants and new entries is part of what we're all trying to do right now. And so Will mentions that, keeping things super simple, making it easier for people to buy, making it more integrated. Maybe it's more integrated DNN store and some other things that could also help with that. But you know, how other people have done this in other ways do give up some control from the developer, but that's okay. You get other benefits in the other direction. The Apple Store is the ubiquitous thing that for most of us established developers and business people, we remember a time before the Apple Store. And we remember how things always have been. Certainly how it was to buy an application and install it on a Windows CE device and some things like that in the past. Many of us have been there before. And the absolute simplicity of buying something and having it on your device in a phone changed the way people buy things. It's a big deal. Well, you know, are there things for us to learn and things for us to see a benefit of from a unified licensing model that makes it easy to buy things? And maybe those handcuffs of some restrictions are worth it if it helps benefit on the other end. And you know, Will and Pete both made statements towards that. Either of you want to chime in a little bit?
Hey, Ryan. Pete. Wanted to kind of chime in on that. So I'm going to bring up a name of a module and skin developer that we all know and love and has had some pretty bad rap recently, DNN Go. Think about new module developers, new theme developers who haven't developed the reputation in the group yet. Mm-hmm. Let's think about making, or what if .NET New thought about making new folks with no reputation, they have to use the .NET New licensing system for the first year or 2 or 3. Or if you've got a bad reputation, let's say, or healing a reputation like DNN Go is, maybe they come in and they have to use DNN Go or DNN's internal licensing methodology for a period of time so that they earn back the trust. Ultimately, my goal, and granted this means I'd be spending a bunch of money on modules every year, but I would want to see that, for example, for those of you who remember Form Master, which is now part of or available for free. But there was a period of time we weren't sure that it was even going to be around, and I used Form Master all over the place. I didn't want to have to go and relearn a new form building system, so I didn't want to have to go purchase a new module. Having a regular and steady influx of cash to those module developers, in a way, kind of keeps them saying, hey, I'm going to make this, I'm going to support it, even if it's just as a hobby. I'm going to support it because these people are paying me to do that.
Yeah. You're helping, in concept, support the base that helps keep them going and let them focus on development instead of focusing on licensing methods or other things like that. David, do you want to share your screen and bring back up the WeWeave, or have me share?
I just posted the link in the chat.
Good deal.
So you're welcome.
Looks like there were some questions, folks asking where some of these links were and where these things were. So Pete was kind of chiming in about that benefit to developers and having it be something that then the consumer trusts and then the developer benefits from. I'll bring it back around again because Mandy mentioned it in the chat, but that in the past, being involved in licensing and being involved in it directly is something that DNN Central or the store system has stayed out of in the past because they don't want to take on that that arbitration role. They don't want to take on that management role. It's a position that has to be there with someone managing it, and it's spending time. And having that be in the hands of the developers is a benefit because then they're doing it for themselves and they're managing it. I would imagine or hope that there's a way to make it a hybrid, though, where it doesn't need a person, and the license, the module developer still is the one who's in control, but it's going through the store system or
some type of
method.
An app on the Apple Store or Google Play or whatever.
Okay, right.
do I even know there's licensing involved?
Nope.
I don't know it.
True.
That's the ultimate customer experience right there.
Very good point.
And there is licensing.
Yeah.
Well, maybe if we were able to actually download the modules to our brain and be able to surf without computers, and we were plugged into the matrix, that's probably the ultimate. But
all right. So, Will, did you have some things to bring in about that? That community view of encouraging more adoption, more people to become involved with what they have possibly already created, and they just need to get going with licensing. About that encouragement side of things.
Well, DNN was founded on the abundance principle, right? Like the more people, the more of us that are involved, the more of us that are doing various things, the more of us that are purchasing modules and building modules and supporting extensions and DNN itself and installing new sites, the more of us that are doing those things, the bigger opportunities we have, the more that we have, the less that we have to necessarily worry about pricing and how we're going to pay our bills the next month, right? And so I feel like if we continue on the status quo, sure, this stuff's been working for us for 10 years. Yeah, but guess what? It's not working right now. It's not. Our community is getting smaller every month. So if we need to, like the word adapt was used earlier, we need to adapt to these models. People are used to having, like David mentioned, do they even know licensing is involved? Like if people have that kind of experience with DNN on all levels, we're going to grow again. And that does mean that some people are going to have to adapt to change. And that change might be maybe we have to consider that maybe we all license in very similar ways, and maybe we have to change in some of the things that we're doing. And that's going to be absolutely necessary if we're going to get there, because people are used to being able to go into different apps and different solutions and different software things, and it's just simple. And right now with DNN, nothing is simple. We have to get there, and we can only do that together, and we're going to have to start agreeing on things and making concessions. We have to. Otherwise, we're going to be moving to different platforms in a few years.
I just wanted to chime into just the last two conversations, and we're making a parallel between DNN platform and an iPhone, and just so we, I know it's the best customer experience that we don't even know licensing when we're downloading an app on iPhone. But I paid $1,200 for my iPhone, and the market that we're working with downloads the DNN platform as an open source free product. So we cannot expect DNN Corp to come in and have the same amount of resources and regulations. Unless we were just talking about DNN Evo product, I think things would be extremely different. But we are working with open source platform and open source product. So at the end of the day, from DNN Corp or DNN Store perspective, they can't go in and provide resources. If nothing else, just customer service. I mean, we're trying to adopt, and we're trying to get the adoption rates up. Let's say they hit through the roof. Who's gonna actually go through and answer all these customers and requests? And that's what's keeping them to putting their hands into it. I mean, I'm sure they do absolutely great when it comes to Evo customers. And they listen, and I'm sure they're proactive, and I think they can get those features in as quickly as they can. But when it comes to DNN platform, that's more community oriented. So I think the solution has to be also community oriented. We cannot keep falling back on DNN Corp or DNN Store to give us a solution. And that's why I said, an open source solution would be much more feasible. It'll be much more quicker to get it into the market than hoping that we will get a solution from Corp anytime soon. The problem we're trying to solve is the developers who have product, they want to sell on the DNN Store, they need licensing system. So licensing is one component. The other component is the order management. Whatever system we're using, if it's open source, they need to know who purchased that vendor's product. Right, and the DNN Store right now does that through something called instant order notification. They do HTTP post to a URL, so we can very quickly and very easily create an open source system, which just points. We give you a URL that points to it, but it all comes down to regulation centralization. Do vendors really want to share their sales data with other people? So at the end of the day, this is going to come down to the vendor who wants to go ahead and create their own solution. I mean, I'm not sure if I'm going to be very comfortable, even if there's a third-party company there that's doing my licensing needs, even if it's free, that I want to have my sales data in their hands. So, like I said, it's a much bigger puzzle that we're trying to solve here, and that's why we can never get to it, because it's all over the place. It's not a very simple task that needs to be resolved, and that is just DNN Store. Then you have people like us who sell our own sites. Then we sell to customers directly. We have purchase orders. How do you handle licensing then and there? So it gets more and more complicated. If I were to solve this problem today, that you have someone who has a product and they want to sell it on DNN Store, so sell it on DNN Store. Don't make it available as a free copy. Don't give it a free trial. Instead, solve that problem. Instead, find out how you can get your product in customers' hand without them actually buying it. Create demo sites, which are refreshing every few minutes. Let them play with the software first. When they're ready to commit, let them buy from DNN Store. And now you don't have to worry about licensing because they have a licensed software already to begin with. And I think once they grow and they see there's a business proposition, there's value proposition into this business, then they can go and worry about a licensing system.
Well,
that's a really good outline, and I think we've seen people follow that path. Start off with honor system for your licensing just to get it started and to get it purchased, and then work on licensing when there's success, when there's a volume.
So another end all be all in our LMS solution, you can download that, use it fully functioning on any instance you want to without buying it. You're just going to deal with an annoying licensing message until you validate. But it at least gets it into people's hands, so they can experience it without having to make a purchase.
I think one good difference between the past times I've participated in these conversations and now is that there is an open source model to consider. That said, that there were some paid module and solutions out there in the past. They haven't been very well promoted. They haven't always been available. So at some point, David, you were mentioning education and just awareness, and that's a big part of it. And this model that Mandy just outlined of how to proceed if you want to get started and test the waters is a good approach towards that idea of crawl, walk, run for your consideration of how to build a module, get it purchased, and then work on licensing as you grow. We're kind of coming towards the end of our time here. We just crossed over 8 o'clock, and so I want to start wrapping this up and getting some final comments in. Mandy, these were, what you just expressed were some good closing thoughts, but I'll pass it to you again for maybe your closing thought or your closing takeaway for us to consider when talking about or thinking about here module licensing in the DNN ecosystem as we want to see it in the future. Maybe some parting thoughts for that.
Sure. I mean, if we're looking at the fact that we're trying to get more developers to adopt and build modules and sell on DNN Store, then in my personal humble opinion, I'm not sure if licensing is the hurdle. I think there's more areas that we can look at, and we had a meeting earlier today in a developer advisory group meeting earlier today, and I think our focus should be there. From our own history, I think we created a module. I created a module in about 2 hours back in 2004 or 5 and put it on Snowcover for $2. It didn't sell for 6 months. I changed the price to $20 and 2 copies sold that day. We had no licensing in place, and we didn't have no licensing in place for several years until we were able to hire 4 to 6 people, and today we got about 24 employees. So I think it's not necessary to solve the licensing problem for people who are just trying to jump into the ecosystem. I'm not saying it shouldn't be solved, but I think our time could be spent better at getting those people to develop those modules to begin with.
That's fair. That's valid.
If my 2 cents, the focus should be in adopting people, making it absolutely easy to spin up a DNN site and start developing. I mean, that's where the focus should be. And And once we get there, once we're adding value, once you're building functionality, then we can worry about monetizing it and making sure that people are not abusing the license and so forth. So.
Good. Kelly, did you want to chime in with a kind of a closing thought or parting thing for us to consider?
Yeah. So I mean, just my comment that I posted above. We've all spent a lot of time on our licensing. I think it would be kind of silly to undo that just for the sake of uniformity. But just real quick, the last statistic that I read, I don't know how recent it was, is that WordPress accounts for about 19% of sites on the internet. And their licensing is confusing as hell for all of their plugins. So, I mean, I don't think that's what's barring people from entering our community. I think our community has been stagnant. And I'm really looking forward to all of the changes that are coming. I'm going to my first DNN Summit this year, you guys. So I don't think, I mean, have you guys ever tried to license WordPress modules? I basically just wanted to rip my hair out. So I don't think licensing is the sticking point here. I think educating people, what is DNN, why is DNN better than the other things on the market. I mean, it's possible that it was 27. Like I said, it was the last one I read, and it wasn't recently. So I don't feel like licensing is the big issue. I feel like education is the big issue. Showing people what we have in our community now that the community is getting recharged, revamped. You know, I think there are bigger fish to fry.
Thank you. Clint, I want to pass it over to you for just a second. If folks wanted to continue this conversation and felt that there were important takeaways, what advisory group would they bring this to participate in for this type of conversation?
So that would be the partner advisory group, which is run by one Mr. David Poindexter. So the store is kind of a sub of the partner group, and you know, we are obviously hoping to make some updates, and one of the topics is, you know, subscription licensing in the store. I think Bogdan is very passionate about the DNN store experience, and so, you know, those things would be kind of large ticket projects, but kind of following what Stroll's saying in the chat, you know, some of those harder decisions or bigger topics are ones that we need to, you know, take head on if we are to survive here.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let me pass it out to David and Clint to just look at the chat and see if anyone else had either anything that we haven't touched or comments that you want to bring back in.
Very active in there.
It has been very active in there. You know, this is the first time that I've paid attention to how many posts, and I thought, you know, we should grab these and we should put them into our posts online, but we would have to reverse that and tell everyone we're going to do that first to make sure they're putting private things in there. So we're not doing that today. Obviously, your chat stays private from being on this live stream, but in future we might share it with more folks. I'm going to have a final thought about the conversation, and it's a little different than when I've had this before with other folks. And I would say that when I have, you know, caught someone for drinks in conversation at a DNN Summit or DNN Con in the past, there's been one perspective or one focus as the here's a big problem and how are we going to solve it kind of thing. And I feel that Mandy did a really good addition into our conversation today in that he kept bringing in points that we had to consider. And even if we thought one thing was important, we have to consider the larger view. And that makes it messy. That makes it very complicated, if nothing else. And a takeaway from today's conversation that I would see is that educating developers on what's available, what ways they can approach things, and how they can encourage their users to go forward with trying and starting out, especially if they're starting out as developers. That education and awareness is a big part of what can help solve the pain point. Everyone is going to have a different problem that they want to solve, but it solves the pain point of those entry-level folks in the developer community who are just getting started. So from a takeaway of myself from this meeting, for training sessions in future DNN conferences, I might suggest that we have another training session that's a full day, and it's just about how you approach DNN licensing for your own modules that you develop. And if people are doing module development training, maybe they graduate onto module licensing development training. And maybe if there's enough interest, that becomes a staple of conferences. So that's just my thought as I'm kind of finishing this out. Thank you, everybody who participated. Thank you, everybody who joined us online and participated in the conversation in chat. I'm going to remind everyone that DNN Summit is coming up. Please register. Please register to attend the conference if you haven't already. We are looking for those people who sign up in the last month. We know that people do that all the time, especially government agencies. It seems that they put in their registrations, the week or two before. If I can in any way encourage you to do it now, that would really help us understand head count, understand T-shirts, understand purchases, and things that have to be prepared for the conference. So please sign up if you haven't already. If you have signed up and you didn't sign up for DNN Summit on the slopes, remember that we have skiing, snowmobiling, all those things that also have to be signed up for. There's the speaker-sponsored dinner. There are a few things that happen that could also require you to sign up as well. Just a reminder to go forth and do that if you haven't already. February, we won't have an active DNN Southern Fried meeting because we'll all be at DNN Summit. So our March session will be a recap of the things that we've seen and done in DNN Summit. We'll be talking about the fun we've had there, and we'll announce who won that DNN Summit Saber that I happen to be preparing. But we'll have a few things on tap for March that we've tentatively scheduled at this point. We have Kelly with Smith Consulting will be coming in to talk with us about a new e-commerce solution from Smith Consulting that is, I believe the name is your Razor Cart, right? Smith Cart, and that naming is gone by the by and by, and now we've got Razor Cart. So Kelly, we'll have you on to participate with us. Looking forward to that very, very much. David, you're going to be on for a portion or a segment, and if you want to share screen just to bring up on screen. Okay.
No screen share, but I do want to put a little bit of teaser out there.
A little bit of a plug there for part of what we're presenting.
One of the initiatives we've been working on as a team here at Envisionative is a new NV Quick item coming out, the NV Quick theme. And the idea of this is not just another theme in the ecosystem, but actually one that is a best practices starter theme for anybody looking to build commercial themes or for client projects or whatever your need for building custom themes is. But it's all about the incredible performance. And I'm just going to tease you with some incredible Google page speed insights numbers, 93 out of 100 on desktop, right out of the box, and 73 out of 100 on mobile. Everything that can be addressed and the theme is addressed, everything else is DNN issues in of itself. So that's pretty impressive. I know it's a crazy claim. I've never personally been able to get a DNN site that high in score. I know you've had a lot of experience in the Google page speed insights. So, the tooling is very modern. It is not opening up Visual Studio and using some template in there to build a DNN theme. It's actually using modern tooling with Node and NPM, Yarn, and Gulp, and those type tools, so you can use editors of your choice.
So we'll
very optimized.
We'll do a little bit of a deep dive into this this new theme offering. This is open source. It's going to be out there, and you're going to give us a lot of information about it. And when I asked, so this is another bootstrap theme. This is another base for you to start from for developing your own custom. David quickly schooled me and said, no, this is not just bootstrap. We're talking about a from the ground. I mean, obviously, but it's worth pointing out that from the ground up, this is using best practices for everything that's theme related. So be paying attention to that. And for those of you who are watching this who are coming to DNN Summit and are in the theming training course, I already asked David's permission to share that with everyone during DNN training. So that should be out there for February for those who are coming to the DNN Summit. All right, everyone. Clint, David, do you guys have anything else that we need to mention before we close down? Clint?
I'm done. I'm good.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us online. Thank you, everybody who's watching this after the fact. We appreciate having everyone on here. If you have ideas that you want to have us talk about, get us that information, info@southernfrieddnn.com. If you have people you want us to reach out to get to speak, if you have anything you want to promote, get it out to us. If you have questions that you don't have answers to, remember that I am collecting those to do a Southern Fried session where we are just answering questions and or finding the right professional or the right advisor who's going to have that answer for you. If you've got questions, bring them to us. We're collecting. Thanks, everybody, for participating. We will see you at DNN Summit, and if not, we'll see you in March. Good night, everybody.